We often view the vastness of space as an empty, chaotic void, a collection of random collisions and independent lights. But this perceived disorder hides a meticulously synchronized clockwork mechanism. This is the concept of Anima Mundi, the world soul. It suggests that the movement of every celestial body is a deliberate pulse within a single, living, interconnected system. Within this machine, eclipses function as the thermostats of reality. They regulate kairos, the specific quality and energetic temperature of fateful time on Earth. When this cosmic thermostat enters an active state, it reveals its raw power. The glowing corona surrounding the total blackout represents a massive surge of concentrated solar energy. Astrology functions as an empirical science, built on thousands of years of persistent observation and data collection focused on these very cycles. This data traced back to the Chaldean priests and Babylonian astronomers who first mapped these shadows. They transformed the movement of the heavens into a rigorous mathematical record. This celestial clockwork was eventually integrated into the foundations of medicine. Hippocrates warned his peers that a physician ignorant of astrology's science was closer to a fool than a healer. Because the ancient tradition views the soul and the stars as two parts of the same mechanism, illness was treated as a loss of synchronization with the world's soul. In this framework, mapping the sky provides the diagnostic coordinates required to restore the body's harmony. These shadows demonstrate that nothing in the sky is ever truly lost. An eclipse is simply a celestial body stepping away to return exactly on schedule. Historic photographic sequences like this one from 1912 clearly prove that the shadow's progression is linear and entirely predictable. This progression adheres to a cycle of exactly 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours, a period of 6,585.32 days. This equilibrium point is where 223 synodic months equal 242 draconic months. The moon's phase and orbital path snap into perfect alignment. These intersection points, the nodes, act as mathematical hinges, creating the geometric knot required for an eclipse. This perfect geometric lock, lasting 6,585 days, is known as the Saros Cycle. After one complete Saros cycle, the Earth, Sun, and Moon return to nearly identical relative positions. The Saros proves we live inside a highly structured, infinitely repeating mathematical matrix rather than a random universe. The Saros cycle represents a single gear within a much larger, multi-generational celestial engine. Above the Saros is the Exeligmos, or the turning of the wheel, a master gear that locks 3 Saros cycles together into a single unit. The Exeligmos operates on a scale of exactly 54 years and 1 month, totaling 19,756 days. This master gear forces the eclipse shadow to the exact same longitudinal coordinate. A Saros family exists for 1,300 years. Born at a pole, the shadow grows stronger over 13 centuries, marching toward the equator before vanishing into the void. Any eclipse we witness today is a genetic descendant of a 1,300-year-old lineage, fulfilling a destiny written in the geography of the Earth. Beyond the geometry lies the physical impact. These alignments exert raw pressure on the quantum field. Astrological tradition assigns a solar eclipse exactly 4 times the energetic weight of a standard new moon. That same multiplier applies to the lunar eclipse, casting a solitary weight over the dark sky. This intensity affects gravitational threads, invisible lines of tension holding our habits, momentum, and reality in place. As the dark shadow strikes the Earth and completely blocks the sun's radiation, it momentarily severs these threads. This severing triggers a systemic reset. It forces a quantum leap and opens doors in the universal metaverse that cannot be reversed. The scale of this system is immense. There are 40 different Saros families running simultaneously around the Earth at this very moment. When these families are layered with deeper cycles like the Inex and Tritos, they form the inescapable master code of reincarnation and fate. The chaotic sky is an illusion. We exist within a perfectly calibrated machine, and its shadows are the keystrokes programming our reality. As above, so below. We experience time as an arrow, moving in one direction, but up there, the solar system operates as a flawless mechanical cycle. Decisions and events from 20 years ago feel permanently settled, relegated to a past that no longer exists. Yet the sky functions as a rigorous ledger. This is the Saros Cycle, a planetary rhythm that tracks every alignment on a rigid, repeating schedule. Early civilizations in Babylon and Mesoamerica obsessively charted these repetitions. They realized that when the heavens returned to a specific configuration, the same energetic patterns returned to Earth. The sky acts as a cosmic alarm clock. Understanding its gears reveals what happens when that 18-year alarm finally rings in our lives. A solar eclipse is a moment of absolute mathematical synchronization. This mechanical precision was modeled 2,000 years ago in the Antikythera mechanism, a device built specifically to track the rigid timetable of the moon. Ancient engineers discovered that eclipses repeat at a very specific interval, exactly 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours. This duration occurs when 3 independent lunar rhythms synchronize. First, the synodic month, tracking the moon's phase. Second, the draconic month, measuring its tilt across Earth's orbital plane. Third, the animalistic month, accounting for the elliptical orbit's exact distance. Every 6,585 days, these cycles align, returning the Sun, Earth, and Moon to nearly identical positions. It is a natural harmony that ensures the geometry of the past eventually becomes the geometry of the present. When this 18-year clock strikes, a brother eclipse occurs, carrying the exact same geometric code as the one that came before it. However, because of the extra 8 hours in the cycle, the Earth has rotated exactly 1/3 further around its axis. March 1970's eclipse carved a path across eastern North America. One Saros cycle later, in 1991, its brother eclipse appeared 120 degrees westward towards Central America. After another 18-year cycle, the pattern shifted westward again, resulting in the modern 2024 eclipse. These related eclipses form a family that survives for 1,300 years, slowly tracking from one pole of the Earth to the other. This means an eclipse is not an isolated event, it is a multi-generational narrative. If the sky is repeating its physical story with such precision, it suggests our own stories might be following a similar script. Astrologers have long argued that the quality of time is just as cyclical as its quantity. They view these celestial alignments as mirrors for human experience. If the heavens return to the exact configuration they held 18 years ago, it raises a question. What was happening in your life back then? People, breakthrough moments, or fears that surfaced 2 decades ago often reappear when the cycle closes. The circumstances look different, just as the eclipse shadow shifts to a new continent, but the underlying lesson remains the same. This suggests that repeating hardships aren't necessarily random. They are moments where the timing of the universe brings an old narrative back into focus. We are forced to look at the same mirror twice. These cycles don't just pass us by. They rotate to ask if we are finally ready to finish the story we started 18 years ago. We tend to think of eclipses as rare glitches in the sky, random mathematical anomalies where the moon just happens to get in the way of the sun. But these shadows possess a finite lifespan. Astronomers call it a Saros series, but you can actually think of it as a living celestial organism, one that breathes with a steady, unbreakable rhythm of exactly 18 years. Every single one of these shadow organisms is born in the freezing darkness. It begins life by barely grazing the extreme northern or southern pole of the Earth, appearing as a weak, faint partial eclipse. The darkness that occasionally falls over a city is a single, evolving cosmic life form, making a centuries-long migration across our planet. The DNA of this shadow is built on a very specific number, 6,585.32 days. That is exactly 223 lunar months, the precise time it takes for the Sun, Earth, and Moon to return to almost the exact same relative geometry. Notice that fraction of a day at the end. That 0.32 means the Earth has an extra 8 hours to rotate before the shadow returns. Because the Earth spins, the next eclipse in the family will strike exactly 120 degrees further west. And the alignment isn't perfectly flat. The Moon's orbit is slightly tilted, so with every 18-year return, the shadow is forced to shift about half a degree north or south, creeping slowly toward the equator. This diagram shows a Sarum series in its infancy. Here, Saros 139 in May 1501 produces a weak partial eclipse, barely touching the Arctic Circle. It stays in this fragile state for roughly 200 years, gaining strength as it inches down the hemisphere. Without these fractional days and misaligned orbits, the shadow would simply repeat the same path forever. These slight offsets give the shadow its movement, allowing it to migrate across the globe over its 1,300-year lifespan. Roughly 600 years after it first grazes the polar ice, the organism reaches its peak adulthood. It arrives at the center of the Earth, the equator. This map shows Saros 139 at its absolute peak in 2186. The geometric alignment is flawless, transforming that weak Arctic smudge into a massive continent-spanning band of totality. This prime era of the shadow's life will last for centuries. As it sweeps across the widest parts of the globe, it plunges lush jungles into deep oceans and densely populated cities into sudden darkness for minutes at a time. When the shadow achieves this perfect geometric alignment, it completely blocks the bright disk of the sun, exposing the violently churning hidden atmosphere that surrounds our star. The sky turns to twilight in the middle of the day. The air temperature drops, animals fall silent, and you are left staring at a blinding white corona wrapped around a pitch-black void. The shadow's darkest, most overwhelming moments happen simply because it is perfectly aligned. For a fleeting window, the sun's absolute dominance is suspended. But a perfect alignment cannot hold forever. After reaching its magnificent peak, the organism inevitably begins a centuries-long physical decline. The continuous, relentless shifting of the lunar nodes pulls the shadow about 300 kilometers further south with every single 18-year heartbeat. It is slowly dragged away from the populated equator and banished toward the extreme lower hemisphere. This chart shows the aging shadow in the year 2475. It has been pushed far to the south, its path now crossing over the isolated ice of Antarctica as it loses its central grip on the Earth. At this wait stage, the periods of totality begin to shorten. As the alignment fractures further, the shadow loses its dark center entirely, reverting back into a weak partial eclipse. A single Saros series operates with a strict biological cap. It has enough time to produce between 70 to 87 eclipses before its run is over. Even the most powerful celestial forces bow to the relentless march of time and orbital drift. Roughly 1,300 years after it was born in the Arctic North, the organism reaches its absolute endpoint at the exact opposite pole. The orbits have drifted so far apart that the deep central umbral shadow now completely misses the Earth. All that remains is the faintest outer edge, a penumbral shadow. Here is the final gasp of Saros 139, projected for July of 2763. This map shows a razor-thin scrape of a shadow grazing the absolute bottom of the South Pole. After this exact moment, the shadow slips off the curve of the Earth. It dissolves completely into the empty void of space, and this specific series ends forever. A Saros series eventually expires, but as one dies, another begins at the opposite node. This 1,300-year life cycle demonstrates that celestial shadows are distinct entities, with a measurable beginning, a peak, and an end. We spend our lives trying to outrun the things we've done and the places we've been. We assume that if we move far enough or wait long enough, the past will simply lose our trail entirely. But the physics of the sky suggests our history is actually waiting for us at a specific mathematical coordinate. Solar eclipses repeat according to the Saros Cycle, a cosmic rhythm lasting 18 years and 11 days. During this window, the Sun, Moon, and Earth return to nearly the same relative positions, preparing to cast the exact same shadow once again. But this orbital alignment contains a tiny, persistent remainder. The cycle doesn't end on a clean day. It finishes with an extra 8 hours of time left on the clock. Those 8 hours force Earth to keep spinning. When the moon and sun align, the planet has turned exactly 120 degrees. The moon's shadow now strikes a completely different continent, landing thousands of miles west. To an observer on the ground, the pattern seems broken. We see a different sky and a different horizon, creating a comforting illusion that the cycle has drifted away and the past has been avoided. The heavens are simply engaging a second, slower set of gears, quietly tallying the leftover time. This geographic drift serves as a mathematical buffer, a temporary delay before the sequence finally resolves. True resolution requires 3 of these Saros cycles to play out in succession. This 54-year and 33-day period is known as the Exeligmos, or the turning of the wheel. Stacking 3 8-hour remainders equals exactly 24 hours. This extra day forces the Earth to complete one perfect additional rotation, canceling the previous half-century's westward drift and pulling the planet back to its original orientation. Look at the path of the total solar eclipse from March 7, 1970. The moon's shadow cut a specific, dark track directly across the North American continent. For the next 50 years, the related eclipses in this family jumped across the globe, landing in the Pacific and then Asia, staying far out of reach. Then came April 8, 2024. After 3 cycles of wandering, the shadow returned to the exact same longitude in North America, tracing over the same hills and cities it had darkened 5 decades earlier. This is the Great Locking. The celestial gears finally interlock, the remainders vanish, and the celestial machinery resets to zero. Every mile of geographic drift is clawed back, anchoring the event to the same singular point in space and time. The Exeligmos demonstrates that the universe possesses a flawless geographic memory. It proves that no matter how far the shadow drifts, it is mathematically required to return to where it began. This precision isn't a modern discovery. Thousands of years before the telescope, humans were already obsessed with the terrifying regularity of this return. Deep within the shipwrecked remains of the Antikythera mechanism, a bronze computer from the 2nd century BC, archaeologists found a dial dedicated to a single task. The Greeks meticulously engineered the gears of this device to track the 54-year Exeligmos, counting down the days until the sky would return to its point of origin. They understood that the turning of the wheel applied to more than just the stars. It meant that every cycle eventually finds its way back home. Like a shadow returning to the same coastline after 50 years, our deepest unresolved conflicts have a way of reappearing exactly where we left them. Decades of running are ultimately undone when the Exeligmos completes its rotation and the gears of the cycle finally lock. In that moment of alignment, the sun is blotted out and there is nowhere left on Earth to run. When the great wheel finally stops turning, you are left standing exactly where you began, face to face with your own history. For our earliest ancestors, a solar eclipse was an event of pure, unpredictable chaos. Without warning, a massive shadow blotted out the sun, plunging the world into a sudden, terrifying darkness that seemed to follow no logic. To find a pattern, Babylonian skywatchers began meticulously recording these shadows, etching dates and times into clay tablets to see if the darkness moved to a mathematical rhythm. They eventually discovered the Saros Cycle, a period of exactly 18 years and 11 days. After this interval, the Earth, Moon, and Sun returned to nearly the same geometric alignment, causing the eclipse to repeat. Tracking one Saros cycle allowed for predictable eclipses, but there are dozens of different Saros families active at once. For centuries, these families appeared to be completely separate, leaving the sky looking like a collection of fragmented, disconnected puzzles. Every individual Saros family has a life cycle. It is born at one of the Earth's poles, travels across the globe for 1,300 years, producing an eclipse every 18 years, and then eventually dies. Historically, science has tracked these families vertically. This treats each Saros as an isolated silo of time, functioning independently of the others. This view assumes that the celestial movements generating these eclipses never interact. It suggests the universe creates profound, rhythmic cycles that occupy the same sky, but never actually influence one another. We have to ask if these are truly just isolated threads, or if there is a hidden mechanism weaving them together into a single structure. There is a secondary, much more elusive rhythm that researchers eventually identified. It is called the Inex Cycle. Astronomically, an inex is defined by a duration of precisely 358 synodic months, the time it takes for the moon to complete 358 full cycles from one new moon to the next. In the calendar time we use, that works out to nearly 29 years, minus about 20 days. This is where the mathematical bridge appears. The Inex cycle connects the chronological gap between consecutive, differently numbered Saros families. This interval creates a specific shift in the lunar node, linking a northern hemisphere eclipse to a subsequent one near the southern nodes. If the Saros families are the vertical threads of a loom, the Inex is precisely the horizontal weft. It demonstrates that the events in our sky are part of a deliberate, woven pattern. To prove this connection, astronomers created the Saros Inex panorama, a massive matrix designed to map every solar eclipse in history. The grid organizes time into two directions. Stepping down a column moves you forward one Saros. Stepping across a row moves you forward one Inex. This transforms chaotic orbital events into a structured map of the sky. The scale of this matrix is immense. It flawlessly organizes 8,000 eclipses, tracking the movement of the sun and moon across tens of thousands of years. This blueprint removes the idea of random celestial events. It reveals that the sky operates as a single synchronized grid. Mapping the Inex reveals a structure that mirrors the organic networks we see in biology. These astronomical relationships operate with the same complexity as the microscopic networks functioning inside the human body. Within this network, the Inex cycle functions like a synapse. It fires information and energy between isolated Saros neurons, binding them into a larger whole. The universe's largest cycles follow the same structural logic as our own internal webs. This suggests the cosmos functions as an integrated living entity. Early philosophers called this integrated reality the Anima Mundi, the world's soul. In this framework, the interlocking Saros and Inex cycles act as the rhythmic heartbeat of the system, maintaining a continuous flow across time. Because the Inex mathematically binds every eclipse to every other eclipse, no single event in this system is truly isolated. Each point is dependent on the logic of the entire network. The Inex bridge reveals a synchronized architecture in our sky. It demonstrates that the universe is not a collection of parts, but a single interconnected web of time. We live within a grand mechanical system. The planets and stars shift in vast, impersonal cycles that dictate the physical environment of our world, governing the rise and fall of entire civilizations over centuries. A solar eclipse is the ultimate physical reminder of this scale. Watching sudden darkness fall over a landscape proves that massive astronomical forces are operating far beyond the reach of human influence. These events were never seen as random. Ancient Babylonian astronomers recorded these alignments on clay for generations, identifying the precise mathematics that governed the sky. These records revealed the Saros Cycle, an 18-year pattern where the Earth, Moon, and Sun return to a nearly identical geometry. It is a predictable rhythm that governs global-scale changes across the world's surface. But the mathematics of empires are too cold to navigate the interior of a human life. Tracking a shadow across a continent tells us nothing about the intimate, personal struggles we face behind closed doors. Yet nature relies on symmetry. If the universe uses massive physical gears to align the planets, it stands to reason that human consciousness follows a corresponding, smaller-scale clock. This personal, internal rhythm is the Metonic Cycle. While the Saros blocks out the physical sun, The Metonic rhythm marks the moments of silent, emotional, and spiritual awakening. It governs the internal timing of our growth. If you currently feel an unexplainable sense of confusion or a sudden urge to change your life's direction, you are likely hearing the ticking of this internal mechanism. Recognizing this rhythm allows us to see our moments of crisis as scheduled transitions rather than random chaos. The Earth and Moon's orbits maintain a precise synchronization, eventually locking back into place. Exactly 19 solar years equals 235 synodic lunar months. The Moon returns to the same phase, zodiac degree, and calendar day, resetting the sky. The importance of this cycle was understood as far back as the 5th century BC. The ancient Greeks built complex analog computers, like the Antikythera mechanism, specifically to track this 19-year rotation. Our internal sense of time is bound by these laws. Our emotional developments aren't random. They correlate with undeniably precise astronomical movements. Reflect on where you were and what you were feeling exactly 19 years ago. Because the Moon is returning to the same degree of the sky it occupied then, it reactivates the original quality of that time. The emotional seeds you planted 19 years ago are re-triggering right now. This isn't a literal repetition of the same events. Instead, the cycle forces us back into the same emotional themes and unresolved tensions we were navigating 2 decades ago. This 19-year return acts as a mirror, forcing us to look at the psychological shadows we might have left behind. The turbulence you feel today is the past resurfacing, providing an opportunity to heal themes that have finally come full circle. Returning to the same astrological door 19 years later is an opportunity for growth, not a recurrence of a curse. You are standing in the same place, but as a different person. You carry nearly 2 decades of new experience, which equips you to handle these familiar echoes with greater wisdom. Our journey isn't a flat circle of repetition. Time functions as an upward spiral. We pass the same points of tension, but from a higher level of maturity. Recognizing this pattern breaks the illusion that our struggles are endless or without purpose. True maturation occurs when we realize the universe presents the same lessons until we have gathered the strength to finally learn them. The lunar nodes and eclipses connected to these 19-year cycles represent more than just the intersection of orbits. They act as specific intersections between our personal lives and a larger collective destiny. These celestial points create a specific threshold that the soul must cross. Every 19 years, we are required to pass through these points to potentize a new sphere of our lives. Stop fighting the recurring themes in your life. Instead, accept that this timing is a necessary part of your development. We find peace by surrendering to the pace of this inner clock and trusting its precision. The clock is striking now. It is time to step through the gateway of the next 19 years.